Hey groovy sound searchers, welcome to the Old Newspaper Plus podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Lorraine, and I like to bring you old news. Today though, in honor of my favorite holiday, we are going to have this live video put on the YouTube channel. So if you're just listening to me on whatever podcast platform you're on, please feel free to tune into my YouTube. I did want to do a live video, streaming live, however, I am still a little new to all of this and I didn't realize that I have to request it. So 24 hours from now, I'll always be able to go live. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Anywho, today I'm going to carve this awesome pumpkin. We are going to do an alien because that's what I am for Halloween this year. Yeah! And now I'm also going to add in a few spooky stories from this book that I have called Weird Ghosts, compiled by Joanne Austin, presented by Mark Moran and Mark Skierman. Sorry if I mispronounced that last name there. It says, the true tales of the eeriest legends and hair-raising hauntings across America. So, I've got my witchy glass, I've got my pumpkin carving stuff. Without further ado, let's get into this. By the way, check out these shoes. They're awesome. Let me grab my little tools here, because I forgot them. Ta-da! Now, I hope everybody likes this holiday as much as I do, and if you don't, that's okay too. You can just enjoy the pumpkin carving, I suppose. Unless you don't like jack-o'-lanterns. But if you don't, you're probably on the wrong part of YouTube and the wrong podcast. Because, as I've mentioned, this is my favorite holiday. So now I'm gonna start off stabbing these little hole marky things so that I can see where I'm gonna cut with my saw when I get there. And let me take off this lid because I already cut the pumpkin's top off and I removed all the guts so everybody can just enjoy the carving part. I also apologize for all of my background noise as I am outside again in honor of spookiness, and I can't turn off the outside noises. Imagine that. It's not easy to do when you have no control over outside noise. Again, I apologize for any quietness. I am marking off my pumpkin so that I may carve it for this video. Probably should have done this part before I got started too, but oh well, here we are. I guess I can jump into one of the ghost stories while I do these marks. This one is probably my favorite one in the book. It's not super long, but it is super creepy, and I wish I could have been there. But I don't believe this house in this story is even there anymore. This story is called Some Things Are Best Left Alone, and it's by Charlie Carlson. And it says, there was this creepy old house near where my grandparents lived in a rural part of Alachua County, Florida. Recalls Jennifer, an elementary school teacher who is still a little nervous about her experience as a kid. Quote, my grandparents lived on a dirt road about 10 miles outside of Gainesville. Across from this big cow pasture was another property where an old two-story farmhouse stood. It was dilapidated. Oh, I love dilapidated. Sorry, I love that word, dilapidated. And unpainted and had been vacant forever. I don't know who owned it or why nobody lived in it, but there was a story about how a man had committed suicide after killing his whole family with a butcher knife. Spooky. My grandmother said it was just a yarn, which is like an old tale, an old wives' tale, that the house was vacant when my grandfather bought the 5 acres next to it and many years before. End quote. Jennifer and her brother often visited their grandparents during the summer months, and would hang out with their 2 cousins who lived a short drive down the road. Pardon me, gotta make a couple marks in between my reading. My bad. Here we go. It was a night in the summer of 1976 that she first noticed something strange about the old empty house. Quote, "From the upstairs bedroom of my grandparents' house where I slept, I had a clear view of the deserted farmhouse across the pasture, and it looked like just a dark silhouette in the moonlight." End quote. On this particular night, Jennifer summoned her brother to take a look because there seemed to be a light in the upstairs window of the house. They both squinted, trying to make sure it wasn't just the moonlight reflecting off of the windows upstairs. I apologize. However, quote, "It definitely wasn't a reflection," she says. "Plus, my brother knew that the panes in the upstairs window had been broken out. That meant that the light was coming from inside the house. But no one lived there. And anyway, we paid no mind to it and went on to bed." End quote. The next morning, Jennifer and her brother asked their grandfather if they could go explore the old house. And instead of granting permission, he sternly warned them to stay away. Quote, "Granddaddy seemed a bit upset that we even asked about the house," Jennifer recalls. "I asked my grandmother why he didn't want us to go, and she said my grandfather had a bad experience there and he didn't like to talk about it. I never did find out what she meant, but it only added to the weirdness of the place." End quote. Later that summer, Jennifer and her brother returned to spend another week with their grandparents. It was just before school started. This is Jennifer again. "It was just before school started in early August, and that old house was still on my mind. On the first night, my brother and I looked out the window and, like before, saw a light on upstairs. This time, for some crazy reason, we decided to go against Granddaddy's orders and just go with our cousins to investigate." End quote. I'm sorry, it is, continue the quotes. The next day, Jennifer and her brother teamed up with their 2 cousins for the clandestine adventure. Here's where we start back with the quotes, my bad. Quote, "We laid low until Granddaddy pulled out of the yard in his pickup to go get some feed for the cows. Once he was out of sight, the 4 of us hiked across the pasture and back to the back of the house. It was overgrown with weeds, with 3 or 4 tall palmetto trees in the yard, and it looked like it had been standing vacant for about 100 years. We all know some old spooky house like this, right? I know I sure do. I almost grew up in one. I did grow up in a creepy old house. Fun story for another time. Back to this story, though. The 4 kids had planned to get a quick peek inside and then leave. Quote, "The back door was barely hanging by rusty hinges, and it squeaked when we opened it. At the time, I was more afraid of seeing a snake or a rat than a ghost. Anyways, we eased our way in, and half expecting to see blood splatters and a butcher knife left over from the suicide murder we had heard about. I kept trying to remind myself of what grandmother had told me, that it was just a far-fetched yarn." Now that I've switched the page, I'm also going to make a few marks on my alien here, on my pumpkin. Definitely should have done this part before I started this video. I love that I have this eerie light making sound behind me. It's one of those old solar panel lights that's just always humming and buzzing and kind of adds to the creepiness, which the highway out there does not. So it's a win-lose situation, but hey, I love the creepy tree back here, and we're good. So, inside the rooms were scattered with boards, broken pieces of wood furniture, and a musty remnants of clothing from an earlier time. From the windows, strands of shredded curtains hung like apparitions, adding to the spooky atmosphere. Quote, birds or bats had been roosting inside because their mess was all over everything. End quote. Remember Jennifer with a slight shiver? That would make me shiver too. Nasty bird doo-doos all over the place. Or bat. Guano. Quote, it didn't take long for something really strange to happen, she continues. I think we were in the front room or the parlor or whatever, when all of a sudden this ice-cold wind rushed down the hall and ran through the house from front to back. It blew my hair back, and there wasn't even a breeze outside. It was a hot and humid Florida August, but inside the temperature was like 40-something degrees. That's pretty creepy, and always, for all of my fellow spooksters, we know that that is a classic tell sign of ghosties. So, she says, quote, one of my cousins wanted to go upstairs, so the rest of us followed. About halfway up the rickety steps, that mysterious cold wind started blowing again. This time, it came down the stairs from the second-story hallway. We couldn't figure out how wind could blow through the house downstairs, then blow down from the second story. It was like someone had opened a door to a giant refrigerator. It suddenly stopped, but we could still feel the chill. All of a sudden, there was a knocking sound inside a wall along the stairs. It was like something was sealed up in the wall and was trying to bust out. Then, at the head of the stairs, a door to a room started opening and slamming shut. It just kept on while we stood there with our eyes bugged out. At that point, I was ready to leave, but my brother wanted to keep exploring that second floor. For some reason, the upstairs was not willing to accept any intruders, especially 4 noisy kids who were disobeying their grandfather. In hindsight, says Jennifer, I think we should have listened to Granddaddy because what we saw next has been in my mind ever since. The door at the head of the stairs slammed shut and locked. It locked itself just as we got there. Then a very bright, glaring light, I mean really intense, seeped out through the cracks around the door frame as the door started knocking and banging, like you would knock on a door with your fist. I don't know what it was, but you could feel it was evil. End quote. Jennifer described the sensation as unnatural, an unnatural feeling that penetrated their souls. Needless to say, the 4 young intruders wasted no time in exiting the old house. Quote, it was like escaping from a refrigerator. I think that we were lucky to get out of that place. I shudder to think what could have happened if we had stayed longer. End quote. Jennifer never did learn what her grandfather had encountered in that old house, which has since been torn down. Nevertheless, she believes it had to do with what they had witnessed as kids, or perhaps something more sinister. What she did learn was a valuable lesson that some things are just better left alone. So isn't that great? I love that story. Way to go, Jennifer. What a creepy, creepy story. And Charlie Carlson for bringing that story to this awesome book, which I love so much. So now I'm just going to make some more holes in my alien here. Don't you love the sounds of a highway? Yeah, me neither. And now I think I hear a train coming. It's alright, it happens. Oh, sure. Now I stop reading and everybody decides they don't need to drive by anymore. So I hope that there are also other people out there that love Halloween as much as I do. It has always been my favorite holiday. I've always enjoyed Valentine's Day too, but never really had very many opportunities to celebrate properly, but who cares? That's a Hallmark holiday anywho. This one, spooky. Every continent has its own version of celebrating this. My personal favorite, besides, you know, just American Halloween, where we go seek out all the candy we can, is Dia de los Muertos. I think I'm saying that properly, because I do not speak Spanish, so I apologize if I mispronounced it. I love the candy skulls. I love the tradition, the stories behind, you know, they believe that they're in Spanish culture, it's taught that their loved ones come to visit from the land of the dead, I think. I don't know, I'm getting that from Coco. I'm not gonna lie. I do find the holiday beautiful though, and fascinating, and everybody should honor their past loved ones. Because we should all be so lucky that we could come back and, at the very least, haunt somebody, you know? That's what I want to do when I die. Come back and just haunt everybody. Not be mean or anything, but, you know, pull your hair every now and then, tickle your toes while you sleep. Just creepy stuff like that. Because I'm a creep. And that's okay. I am accepting of who I am. As we all should be. So I'm finishing up the mouth on this. And then, yeah, I'll start up to another story after I sit me a little bit. Everybody let me know what you think of my costume as well. Except the shoes, because I'm not a cobbler. I made this costume. I also made one for my sister-in-law. We are aliens together, baby. It's fun. She likes to dress up. I like to dress up. Our kids are going trick-or-treating. So, I won't be out of place. And even if I am, I'm okay with that. If I could dress up in Halloween stuff every day, I probably would. But then people would probably look at me like I was super weird. Alright, little tiny piece of the mouth on the bottom. Boom. All right, now we can take our paper off. Woohoo! Nice. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I'll set this right here. I did choose the wonky side of the pumpkin by accident. Oh well, too late now. Ooh, this is a good one. I don't think I'm gonna read it. It's kind of long. It's about, oh, here we go. Here's a little shorter piece of it, though. A little shorter description. It's also comes from Florida. I did not do that on purpose. It just happened. There is what is called the dead zone in Florida on Interstate 4. People from Florida probably know what I'm talking about. It's not just a dead zone for your cell phones and all technology and all kinds of good stuff. It's also very it's a very common place where a lot of very tragic accidents have happened. So yeah, it's a creepy place. And this says reports from the dead zone. We've been emailed more than a few reports from the men and women who have had a brush with the mysterious goings-on while driving the fabled stretch of Interstate 4 outside Daytona, Florida, known as the Dead Zone. Quote, I've always heard about this strange part of the highway, but didn't believe it until I had 2 accidents in 2 different months right in the middle of the dead zone. I don't know if my accidents were caused by spirits or some other anomaly, but I do know that the spot is too dangerous. I encourage everyone to read up on the dead zone and make up his or her own mind. I, for one, plan to steer clear from that place from now on. And that's from a guy named Scotty. This one is from someone named Kyrie. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I had a friend named Kyrie growing up, so I think I'm saying it right. It could be Kiri. Either way. Quote, one explanation that hasn't been considered for dead spots is like the one on Interstate 4 is limestone deposits close to the surface. My grandfather, an engineer, tells me that the limestone absorbs radio waves. I have found that many of the local spots where I lose my cell phone signal have large limestone deposits. So that's always cool. Thanks for that little tidbit, Kyrie, or Kiri. I think it's Kyrie. It's always nice to have knowledgeable people to help us understand crazy, weird things, like dead spots in roads. Of course, who knows? Could be limestone, could be ghost, could be demons. I don't know. I don't even know if I've ever been down that part of that highway. Although I've done lots of driving through Florida. It is my homeland. Fun little fact about me, everybody. I'm full of those today. I am from Florida. I don't know what type of Florida stereotypes I fit into, but be nice. Next, let's see. This quote comes from someone called Bambi, like the deer. I love it. Says, quote, I just read about the Interstate 4 dead zone. Being new to Florida, I had no idea about the graves. My daughter and I are sensitives. I'm assuming that means like medium kind of sensitive, empathic. And it says, we've wondered why we get very uncomfortable and almost frightened when we drive over the area. So much so that I have to avoid it at all costs, even if I have to drive 20 miles out of my way. Now I know why. Because of the graves, I guess, that are underneath it. I didn't know there were graves there. That's creepy. I'd be pissed if somebody just built a roadway over my grave. Could be why it's haunted or paranormal of sorts. There's my paper, so I make sure I'm doing this right. Oh yeah, okay. I see. Oops. Did you like that? I am a little clumsy from time to time. A little more cutting. Drop that piece. All right, now we have one from Johnny L. Sorry, these are really fancy letters. Quote, I read about the dead zone on Interstate 4 near the St. Johns River. Believe it or not, the last 2 times I vacationed in Central Florida, I had a car accident in that very spot. The area is now under construction, but I don't think it will change things. There's just something very strange about that section. End quote. Thank you, Johnny L. That's really cool. So, this is a good one too, and it's pretty short. This next story is called The Legend of Mary's Bridge by Tim Westcott. Yeah, Westcott, sorry. Down in Louisiana. I've always wanted to go to Louisiana. I've driven through on my way to Texas, but never been able to stay. One day, though. Down in Louisiana, between the Cajun villages of St. Martinville and Broward, lies a road with an ill-omened bridge, my bad. The name of the road is Rue Bayou Tortue, the Turtle Bayou Road, by the most locals known by its nickname, Stone Road, for the teenagers who get stoned on drugs there. And at the parish line, a small bridge crosses over the Erie Bayou Tortue, where tall cypress trees draped with Spanish moss line the banks. Although alligators and water moccasins teem the waters, most people are more concerned with the ghost of the Cajun girl named Mary. That sounds awesome. But I like ghost stories. Okay, this next part, it's the same story, different part. This one's called The Horrible Death. Ooh. Against the wishes of her parents, Mary was dating an American, the term used by the locals for a non-Cajun or Creole. A good Catholic girl, Mary refused to give in to her boyfriend's sexual advances. Just before midnight, on the last day of her life, Mary and her boyfriend, who was dead drunk, were driving through the countryside when he shouted, "Give in or I'll throw you in the bayou." Mary begged him to take her home, but the boy repeated his ugly threat. When Mary tried to flee, the story goes, her boyfriend hit her in the back of her head with a whiskey bottle until she lost consciousness. He then dumped her into the bayou, where the gators would undoubtedly do the rest. Despite the intense search that followed the sickening crime, Mary's body was never found. The boyfriend disappeared about a week later, but all of his belongings were left at his house. It's rumored that Mary's father damned the boy to the same fate as his only daughter, and it appears the hex must have worked. To this day, they say if you go to the bridge at midnight, turn off your car, and then call out, "Mary, Mary, Mary," your car won't start, and you'll have to push it off the bridge before you can get it running. But that pales in comparison to another supposed occurrence. At midnight, on the anniversary of her brutal death, you can see Mary frantically circling the bridge in a long white dress, imprisoned there after her life was cut short by an evil boyfriend. And that's the end of that tale. So I'm gonna have to go visit that bridge one night, because that sounds right up my alley. Yeah, so excuse me for a second. Oh, okay, there is that. That poor girl. Girls, don't date guys that try to force you to do things. It's not okay. Guys, don't date girls that try to force you to do anything either. It's not right. I must have missed a couple of little marks here. Okay, here we go. Oh, I see. Just didn't take very thick. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Oops. Gonna cut some more pumpkin. Hope y'all like my song. If this is too long of a video, I will not be offended if you don't watch the whole thing. However, I'm here. I've started, and I'm gonna finish. A little bit more. Whew. Still got some slimy guts in there. Okay. And this needs a little planetary Saturn ring. Oops. Don't think I was supposed to cut it right there, but that's okay. Still cool to me. You know, hopefully. It's coming along. I have a couple of things. Excuse me. Ooh, Wisconsin's Chicken Alley. Due east of Caryville, across Wisconsin is the town of Shawano. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, I apologize, Wisconsin. I am a southerner, so if you're looking for phantom trees, disappearing street signs, disembodied lights, ghostly voices, and chickens from the grave, then this is the place for you. Chad Lewis and Terry Fisk, who run the website unexplainedresearch.com, describe it here. And they say, quote, Chicken Alley is a short L-shaped road nestled in a quiet countryside just outside Shawano. Though short, this picturesque country road has been the scene for more than one bizarre occurrence. Witnesses, there are so many flies out here. That's Florida for you, though. Witnesses traveling the route have reported spotting several chickens running down the road, but they aren't just any chickens. You can see right through them. Often, these phantom chickens vanish into thin air. Wisconsin, what is up with your chickens? Tell them to just die already. Just joking. I like chickens. I don't eat chicken, but I do like chickens. My family raised chickens for a little while. That was that was interesting. Excuse me. So if you find yourself driving through this area, you might consider exiting at the intersection of French Road and Chicken Alley. If you stand in the middle of the intersection, some say, ghostly voices will yell for you to get out of the road. These voices are often interpreted as a warning signal with ominous overtones. However, you may have difficulty finding the eerie intersection, since many witnesses swear that the Chicken Alley street sign disappears or isn't there at all. You should muster the courage to investigate. Look for a large disfigured tree hunkered down by the side of the road, which reportedly can be seen only on full moon nights. Many prior witnesses are amazed to discover that this easily identifiable tree isn't visible on every trip. That's really cool. I love the sound of a disappearing giant tree. Before leaving Chicken Alley, be sure to check out your car's rear view mirror. Some residents have reported seeing mysterious disembodied lights zooming in on their vehicles at great speeds, only to instantly disappear. The lights take on several shapes, colors, sizes, and have approached from all directions. Can you spell yikes? They wrote that, not me. Cute though. That's a pretty good one. Since this is the old newspaper plus, let's also read a little bit of some old ghost stories, shall we? Again, for anybody who is just hearing the audio, I apologize for my breaks because I do need to continue to cut this pumpkin for my awesome video that's going to be on my YouTube. Go check it out. And everybody remember, if you have any spooky stories that you want me to research, or some old news that you're just interested in, or even if it's not spooky, make it happy. That's cool with me. Email me. the Old Newspaper Plus, all words spelt out, at gmail.com. And I will do my best. I love to get suggestions. Had a suggestion for St. Augustine, Florida, the most haunted city, or the oldest city. It's not the most haunted. That would be Savannah, I think, Georgia. And but it is the oldest recorded city in America, originally inhabited by the Spanish. But they didn't really live in Florida very much, though. There was, stations here for like shipping purposes and trade and stuff like that. But actually, Florida wasn't really inhabited except for Native Americans who came here first, obviously. Whew, he was scary. So yeah, fun little fact, most of Florida wasn't really inhabited for a very, very long time after all the settlers started coming here. The Spanish were just the first to actually make forts, and there were a couple of towns where, some people would live, especially military people, I think, but for the most part, it was uninhabited. Excepting the natives, of course, which are some of my favorite people in the world. One of my childhood friends hopefully catches this episode and gets to hear them. Yikes! Don't break off my eyeball! Don't cut my finger through my pumpkin either. Yeah! Come on. Got it! Yes! Awesome. Cool, man. Here, I'll show y'all this. So we're getting close to, we're probably a little over halfway done with my pumpkin here. Hope everybody's still with me. I've been on here for 37 minutes, almost 38, which is not super crazy for my podcast, as my normal listeners will attest to. Let's see. Ooh, let's get back into New Orleans, as long as this one isn't super long. Nope. Maybe this one. It's a little snippet. A temporary lodger, with a question mark. In the late 1880s, rumors tied the eccentric son of a wealthy New Orleans family into the Lalaurie mansion. Joseph Edward. Ooh, I've never seen Edward spelled like that before. It's cool. Edouard. Very cool. Joseph Edward Vign. Vigne? Sorry, I'm not great at pronouncing everything, guys. Supposedly lived secretly in the house for several years until his death in 1892. He was found dead on a tattered cot, apparently having lived in filth. Ooh, anybody who knows anything about the Lalaurie house and Madame Lalaurie, who was featured in American Horror Story, I think it was Coven, that she was played by Kathy Bates. Very fascinating character. Love that series. I love that season of that series. Everybody should go check stuff like that out, because it's Halloween. But yeah, she was pretty horrible human being who tortured many slaves and apparently guests in her own home. I suppose nobody can be perfect, but nobody has to be awful. That's not a requirement to being human, in case anyone is confused about that. So hidden away in the surrounding rooms was a collection of antiques and treasures. A bag containing several $100s was found near his body, and another search uncovered several $1,000s hidden in his mattress. For some time after, rumors that the mansion held a concealed treasure circulated, but few people dared to go in search of it. I don't blame them. How much of the tale is true or is lost to time still was Vignier's ghostly voice, one of the many that frightened later inhabitants of the cursed house. Spooky. Yeah, we're all the way down. Sorry, a couple of my marks got a little messed up, but we're doing great. And I'm almost done, so in order to hurry and try to take into consideration that everybody else has their own time schedules. Boom. I'll just do a little more cutting. Cool. And I'll shape all this up once I get off of here. And then I'll send out pictures, post my pictures on my social media. Follow me on The Old Newspaper Plus on Instagram, Facebook. You can obviously find me on YouTube, which I will be able to go live after tomorrow, I think. So maybe I'll start doing special things for holidays. Who knows? I'll definitely always do something special for this holiday because it is, in case I didn't mention, my favorite. Okay. Sorry, I was trying to find another cool story to go through. This one seems to be calling my name. Ooh, it's a little long. Yeah. Skip that one. Ooh, otherworldly outdoors. Cool. Let's see what this is. It says a media circus in the otherworldly outdoors section of the book. The determined but failed attempt to rescue Floyd Collins became a national sensation. Again, I do apologize for the highway. I'll start that over. The determined but failed attempt to rescue Floyd Collins became a national sensation, even without the aid of TV or radio, and the press were even to keep the public fascinated by what was happening. In fact, it could be said that the story reached historic proportions. Louisville Courier-Journal reporter William Burke, aka William Burke Miller, aka Skeets, and that's a funny nickname. I'm sorry, that's a funny nickname, dude. Who interviewed the trapped man several times, won the Pulitzer Prize for his coverage. Years later, the drama surrounding Collins' death inspired the 1951 movie Ace in the Hole, originally titled The Big Carnival. A famed author, Robert Penn Warren, based his novel The Cave from 1959 on this event. Very interesting. Anybody who's wondering where this is, it's located in Mammoth Cave Parkway of Kentucky. So, fun little thing there. I've never heard of Mammoth Cave, but apparently this whole first section is all about how tragic it was, and it's also known as the world's largest haunted place. So that's fun. Let's all go visit that. By the way, everybody should definitely continue to support your local museums, your historical societies. Guys, we need history. The younger generations need to know what's happened already in order to not do shit like that again. Or to be sure to repeat some activities and habits, like trying to better our actions in saving the planet. These are things that humans now know about, and we should continue to teach the younger generations. But that's not what I was getting into. I was more trying to plug for local libraries and museums, like I said. And you get to learn really cool stuff, like where the best ghosts are. I am on my last little cutout here, and then we're gonna end this little video. Before I go, everybody remember to like, follow, and share. Make sure to share the podcast with your friends, your family. I eventually do plan to sign up for a Patreon for anybody who is willing to help me keep my podcast going financially. I say Patreon, I assume that's how it's pronounced. I don't really know. Patron, my Patreon, that's how my favorite podcasters, myself, they say it, so I will say Patreon. And you know what? You're on my podcast, so deal with it. All right, that was my last little piece, although I did forget to cut out the other Saturn ring, but nobody's gonna care. Ta-da! It's an alien, like me. Ah! Live long and prosper. Yeah. I was a little bit of a Trek fan. Not much. More of a Star Wars fan. Definitely a fan of aliens, though. That's it for today. Thank you guys all for listening. Everybody have a really happy holiday. Happy Halloween. Stay safe out there, and make sure to give your kids lots of candy. And for everybody else, just have fun. Enjoy yourselves. This is the Old Newspaper Plus. I'm Courtney Lorraine, and I'll continue to bring you old news. Peace out. Live long and prosper. Bye.